Man, it's been like 5 years since Devil May Cry 5. I loved that game, maybe even more than DMC 3. After all, Devil May Cry is the peak of combat. Man, that's a good title. I should use that for a video on the subject. Like, I genuinely don't know where the series could go from DMC 5. It was pretty much perfect. But, it's still been a while, so I'd love to see a new Devil May Cry game. I mean, after 5 years, even a fairly iterative sequel would be just nice to have. Wait, why is there a monkey's paw on my desk? Oh, this is going to suck. So, goofy intro aside, imagine my shock when I saw an ad for DMC Peak of Combat, and I knew that no matter how scared I was of what this would do, I was obliged to play it. DMC has a special place in my heart after all. Like many series I loved, I was late to the party with this one. I only really got into the series when I got a PS3 and was able to play the DMC HD collection. There was no Steam port back then. Prior to this, I had only been able to play DMC 4 and the truly awful old PC version of DMC 3. Then, a little bit after that, DMC 4 Special Edition would release, much to my excitement, and then a few years later I got to enjoy the incredible return to form that was DMC 5. And then they put Virgil in DMC 5 and my life was complete. And on top of that, DMC 5 had a sort of finality to it. I really do feel like any future games would have to do a lot of heavy lifting to justify their existence, and even then we'd likely only see DMC as a once-a-generation title like it has been with 4 and 5. Heck, I was fine with the series being laid to rest to occasionally be brought out for shiny re-releases. These are some of the most replayable games out there after all. But no, we couldn't let the Sons of Sparta rest in peace. We gotta exhume those corpses and make them dance to sell microtransactions. So yeah, I was a little bitter and very skeptical. But I don't like to be a negative channel, so let's at least start by diving right into the good part, which thankfully is also the part that needs to be good for a Devil May Cry game: the combat. Heck, even the name of this mobile game is cashing in on DMC's well-earned reputation for some of the best gameplay out there. And combat is pretty good for a mobile game approximation of a spectacle fighter. Actually, it's probably about as good as you could hope for here. I've played worse action games on actual consoles and PC, so it has that going for it, even if it only has the barest similarities with DMC itself. Actual Devil May Cry is much more focused around relatively basic attacks that you can string together freely, something that I'd like to do a whole video on sometime, and how Devil May Cry's combat is so unmatched. Meanwhile, Peak of Combat is much more focused on special moves and cool things like perfect dodge counters. It's flashier and easier to be kinda cool, but it lacks the expressiveness and the tight control of combat in the main games. It's built like a competent, standard action game rather than like Devil May Cry. So let's get into the weeds and go over the actions. You have a standard attack combo. Most characters have one or two alternate attacks they can perform, such as pausing during Devil Slayer Dante's melee combo to do the million stab, just like a real DMC game. Nero is able to attack after a dodge to perform his streak or caliber dash attacks, and both of them are able to hold the attack button to either do their launcher from the ground or for a plunging attack from the air. You also have buttons to dodge and jump. Jumping as proper does grant you iframes as effectively as dodging does, and both dodges and jumps can perform an extreme version by a perfect timing mechanic. Do it at just the right time to get a bonus. I don't actually know what an extreme dodge does, but an extreme jump causes your character to backflip away and then lets them fly back in with a cinematic counterattack. Also, some characters can perform special evasions. Certain versions of Dante and Virgil can teleport, as you might expect from their respective Trickster and Darkslayer styles. And then you have the special moves. One is a cooldown-based option, which you'll be using regularly, and the other is a meter-based super move that uses the same magic meter you'd use for Devil Trigger in the real games. And in at least one case, it just flat out is Devil Trigger. I don't really like this focus on limited use special moves, since this is at odds with the philosophy of the real Devil May Cry games, but they do at least feel well enough implemented, I guess. And then lastly, you actually play with a party of 3 characters. You can swap between them on the fly. Swapping will perform a small attack, but if you meet a certain condition determined by the character you are switching to, you'll perform a stronger special attack, which helpfully snaps to whatever target it locks onto. And this is probably the most interesting aspect of this game's combat, in contrast to the main series. Not only does it fill in for the weapon swapping mechanics that have been an iconic part of DMC's combat since the 3rd game, but the generous auto-targeting makes it extremely useful for reorienting yourself. Plus the conditions for activating these special attacks and the long cooldown on switching characters ensures these don't become so spammable as to overshadow the other elements of combat, and instead they primarily function for keeping your combos going by putting you into a good position. The generous auto-targeting may sound weird to people used to console games, but remember this is on mobile. Everything's a little clunky, so being able to instantly snap to an enemy is actually borderline necessary to keep the flow going. So it does have some very un-DMC elements. It's totally missing the interplay of ranged and melee attacks, movesets are limited and dominated by special moves, and the cinematic counterattacks just feel wrong in a series that normally is focused on maximum control and moment-to-moment engagement in combat. But it is actually pretty fun and very dynamic, at least. If they had to choose between being faithful and actually being playable on mobile, the latter is worth prioritizing if this has to be a mobile game. There's generous tracking on your attacks, and character swap attacks tend to snap to enemies, making them very useful for keeping up the momentum. It may not be the true peak of combat across all of video games like, the real Devil May Cry games are, but it is quite possibly the peak of combat on mobile. I say as someone who plays barely any mobile games. But you're just not going to get the tight and precise control of a real DMC game on a phone, so they have to make do with what they can create. I even get carried away sometimes and try to play more aggressively like a real DMC game, even if the game can't keep up with these kinds of inputs. So I guess that says something that it feels good enough that I try and do that. However, the inevitable mobile game RPGification does work against it. And keep in mind I love action RPGs. This is Devil May Cry, though. Whether I win or lose a battle should be, first and foremost, down to my abilities. The way DMC is designed, a maxed out character cannot make up for a lack of player skill. Most upgrades focus on giving your character a wider range of options rather than direct strength increases. But here, there is a lot of making numbers bigger. I mean a lot. Which really brings us to the end of the good combat section, and instead to all of the bad stuff. I could talk about any number of problems this game has, but what I really want to focus on is stupid fucking mobile game bullshit. Devil May Cry, the real games, not this shitty mobile game, has always been a fairly elegant series. In fact, if you subscribe to the idea that perfection is when there's nothing left to remove, DMC 3 may well be a perfect game. Mobile games, meanwhile, tend towards unnecessary excesses of the worst kind. Features thrown in for the sake of having them, for the sake of making things more complicated, or to force you to grind. Only very rarely are mobile game auxiliary systems actually designed to make the game more enjoyable to play. Often, these are the worst kinds of RPG mechanics that are simply about making numbers bigger. Naturally, all the mobile game bullshit is pretty much anathema to Devil May Cry, and there is sure a lot of anathema in this game. First, there's the upgrade systems. Oh, God, there are so many upgrade systems. Use EXP items to level up your hunters, increasing their stats. Use shards acquired mostly from getting duplicate hunters to increase your hunter's rank, boosting their stats and unlocking new passives. Use a different set of EXP items to level up your weapons and increase stats there. Use duplicate weapons to rank up your weapons to unlock different minor passives and increase stats. You also have 4 card slots. Each card has a set and a number. Equipping 2 or 4 cards of the same set gives a set bonus, but card stats are random and you can only equip a card to a slot that matches its number. There's no reason for this restriction except to make it harder to get a full optimized set. And of course you can upgrade cards too using a third type of EXP item, and you won't know all of the stats a card provides until you've upgraded it. Lastly, you can upgrade skills, mostly increasing the damage values of active skills, and this uses a mix of red orbs and skill books. Oh, and of course there's making gacha pulls to get new characters and new weapons, or more likely duplicates of both. Can't forget that. Also, there's your office level, which is sort of your account level. You increase it by, playing the game and such, like normal leveling up, but your office level also serves as a level cap for characters and weapons, so that's one more factor complicating shit. That was one take. Did that all at once to give the real impression of how much overwhelming shit there is. Moving on. There's plenty of other bullshit too we need to cover. This game has complete currency overload. On top of all the stuff in the upgrade section, I just want to illustrate a few more of just how sinister this is. There are 2 different types of gems. The premium currency, because it's always gems, one of which is more premium and has a few special uses, while the less premium one is the one that you actually get from free-to-play rewards and in many of the bundles. We'll get to those. Oh, and there's also 3 different items that you can spend for gacha pulls instead of gems, and each of these is locked to a certain category of gachas. There's also tedious dailies and effectively mandatory side content. There's like 4 different once-a-day missions for various resources. The Slot of Slaughter, which gives you random battles for cards. You have to regularly check up on co-op, PvP, and the Bloody Palace. Oh, and there's this daily choose your own quest chain thing too, and I'm probably forgetting some other stuff while I write this. There's a lot of shit to take up your time here. Let's see. There's also a stamina system, because of course there is. Oh, and you just know it does that thing where the early game buries you in stamina bonuses so that it doesn't actually become an issue until after they hook you. Of course it's a gacha game. But there doesn't actually seem to be a lot of characters to pull for in the gacha. I think during the first few weeks when I was actually playing, there were like 11. And heck, they're mostly just variants of the same 4 characters. Dante, Lady, Nero, and Virgil. Most of the time, you just get a lot of base rarity weapons in the gacha. These weapons serve absolutely no purpose other than to be consumed to upgrade other weapons of the same type. And since a character will always come with a base weapon of that type, to be clear, this means the majority of your gacha contents are duplicates by default. Your very first gacha pull will be mostly duplicates. That is how unsatisfying and miserable this gacha is. Oh, and the game loves having particular challenges that arbitrarily all but require a certain element. Sometimes it is a soft requirement, like a massive buff to hunters with a certain element. Other times it is a hard requirement. No, you cannot use any other elemental hunters. Did you get a really powerful rare fire element hunter? Are you like me, where your only team of 3 matching elements you can field are fire? Well, too bad, you need physical hunters here. Don't have a full team of 3? Sucks to be you. It is the most artificial way of encouraging a varied playstyle, but it is made worse by the fact that the only way to address this if you don't have the needed team members is to grind or spend real money. Honestly, all of this shit gets in the way of me enjoying the game a lot. And I don't mean in the sense that I don't want to support a game that does such terrible monetization. Well, I mean, we're going to get to that. But also just, I spend more time fucking around with progression systems and repetitive tasks than actually enjoying the game and, like, playing the story. Which isn't that good, by the way. The story is really fucking boring. The game just keeps me away from the fun parts of itself. And of course, now we have to get to what I'm sure you are all waiting for me to tear into this game for. All the different ways they try and get you to shell out. Are you worried about all those currencies and systems you'd have to grind? Well, don't worry, the game solves this problem by letting you buy them for real money. Wait, sorry, I read that wrong. What I meant to say is, well, too bad the game made up this problem to get you to buy the solution for real money. And they make it really confusing too. They don't just make it straightforward to buy shit. Like, there's a ton of weird offers. There's some confusing try then buy thing with a version of Virgil in Chapter 1. There's a confusing thing where they get you to make 10 pulls, but then you only get to choose one to actually keep. It's already kind of dumb, but you also have to pay $60 fucking for it if this is right. I thought I saw it's supposed to be 90% off, but either that doesn't display or they genuinely think that this is worth $600 fucking dollars. Oh, but you don't have to actually pay to do the rolls, just to keep one. It's fucking insidious, and you could buy several 10 pulls for this price. So I don't even think it's a good deal. Let's see, there's lots of free minor things and various shop pages to get you to click onto them. Honestly, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells playing this game. Like, if I touch the wrong thing, I will be buried in mobile game debt. I assume this is to try and get whales to spend in as many places in order to make as much money from them as possible, but to me it just makes me less willing to spend because I can't decide what I want to spend my money on effectively. And the fact that I never spent any money because of this decision paralysis turned out to be the right choice, as we'll see later. Oh, but before we get there, let's see. There's also a battle pass with 2 separate premium tiers because fuck you, that's why. And just wait, there's more. So many goddamn things. One-time purchases you have to unlock by clearing chapters that have steep so-called discounts. Buy a specific pack multiple days in a row for extra rewards. Buy once-a-day packs. Buy a pack that gives you more currency as you level up. Buy cards that give you daily payouts to keep you playing. Buy. Normally I'm not averse to spending some money on free-to-play games. I don't immediately reject that stuff like some people do. In fact, I actually do like to spend some money on games if they're giving me a good experience, but this sort of monetization just turns me off. It makes me feel like spending money will be a slippery slope, that just making 1 or 2 purchases won't be enough, and instead I'll have to fight the temptation to spend more and more money. What's that? It gets worse? No way, it's already so bad. How could it get worse? $100 for a guaranteed unlock of Endless Judgment Virgil plus some upgrade mats. And they have the fucking balls to say it's worth $300 so that they can claim this is 67% off. Why not be more accurate and say 66.6% off? Or would that be too on the nose here? And as someone who spent my hours with this game focused on trying to pull for Endless Judgment Virgil while free to play, and who was considering spending a little money in pursuit of that goal, this fucking broke me. This was the moment I knew I would not play this game long term and I would not spend any money on it. Let's put this in perspective, alright? Do you know what you can buy for $100? Well, on Steam, you can spend $30 on the DMC HD collection with DMC 1, 2, and 3, $25 on DMC 4 Special Edition, $40 on DMC 5 Deluxe, and then you'll still have $5 left over for a slice of pizza or something. And that's if you don't get them on sale. That is currently their full retail price. And this is Steam, so you know there will be sales. And if you need your Virgil fix, well, 3 of those 5 games include playable versions of Virgil. And this is being charitable and ignoring their obviously bogus discount and treating $100 as the actual value. If we were to pretend $300 was the real price for this, I don't think I need to explain why this is bullshit. This is no longer a microtransaction, it is a macro transaction. Oh, and they put this offer right after they let you demolish a boss fight using a free trial of Endless Judgment Virgil, just to tempt you further. This really did make me quit the game. I'm sure there's worse microtransactions out there, but after a certain point, I don't think it matters, right? Because if a microtransaction is bad enough to get you to quit a game, does it really matter how bad it is beyond that? Look, as I said earlier, I don't have the strongest anti-microtransaction stance. I don't actually mind spending $100 on your free-to-play game, even all in one shot, but you'd better roll out the red carpet and treat me like goddamn royalty, got it? I'm not gonna pay $100 just to get a single cool thing plus a bunch of filler fluff. And this game is fun enough that I probably would have spent $100 for the red carpet treatment, but instead they just try and fucking rob me. Alright, that's a wrap. We're done here. Finding this broke my will to touch the game ever again. It's been like 2 weeks since I encountered this and I haven't played since. I don't want to be an angry critic, I try to be respectful of games, but this made me angry and I see no reason to respect a game whose own creators are willing to compromise its integrity with this level of bullshit. Let's get to the conclusion so I never have to think about this game again. You know, I really wanted this game to be good. I may have a general dislike of mobile games, but I try not to universally hate a category of stuff. I'd love it if mobile games were a good alternative to the handheld market of old, and Peak of Combat does kind of deliver on its name with pretty damn good combat. For a mobile game, it's incredibly fun to play. Unfortunately, everything else is a travesty, and it commits every mobile game sin in the book. Unrewarding gacha mechanics, tedious RPG elements, repetitive dailies, and the monetization. This aggressive monetization honestly makes me worry they may just take the money and run after a year or so, or otherwise that they just don't care about player retention and would rather just chew through as many new players and milk them for what cash they can while they have the opportunity. Either way, it does not inspire confidence that this is a game worth sticking with for years. And I'm sure some people are saying that I'm being unfair. This is a mobile game and I shouldn't compare it to the real Devil May Cry games. But you know what? If they didn't want the comparison, they shouldn't be using the name. I would not be playing this game if it was not called Devil May Cry. But they used the name, so they must want DMC fans like me to play it. They're dragging gaming royalty through the mud here. I don't generally intend to cover things I don't enjoy or at least have some kind of positive attachment to, but this was personal. This needed to be called out because Devil May Cry deserves better. And the worst part is this game could have been better, but with all of the mobile game bullshit, the only motivation I have is to uninstall this shitty game and go play a real DMC game. And you should too. Don't waste your time with this. Even if this game is fun, it's not worth humoring them or being tempted by the microtransaction bullshit. And frankly, that brings me to the one good thing that came of this. Playing this game got me to go back and put some more time into real DMC games. I've been replaying 3 and doing a Virgil Must Die run of 5, and I'm loving both of them. So if you need a DMC fix and already have all the games, just go back and replay something that's actually worth your time. As I said near the start of this video, these are some of the most replayable games out there. But that's it. The anger is gone, and now I just feel sad about this. Thankfully, next time, we have something better to talk about. Well, this is MacLeod, signing off.
That's enough!